Hello, my name is Ram Vendatraman. Today I'll be talking about microservices architecture. So, what are microservices? How microservices are useful in building today's application? How software applications were built before microservices were invented? And what are the advantages and disadvantages in using microservices versus a monolithic versus SOA, that is service oriented architecture. So that is the agenda for today. What are microservices? Microservices are a tiny software autonomous block which has a definitive objective, right? A business objective to deliver something. So it's actually as compared to the bigger software application, it is a smaller in nature. It has its own inputs, processing engine, and output. So it's a smaller in nature. It's a miniature in nature, but it works in the same way that the bigger application works. So how are we making use of it? So in those days, in while having monolithic application, we built all these components put together, right, in under the same block. It's more like one single software block, which has all the functionalities, maybe more than 100 functionalities built together. And it will have a set of inputs coming, and everything will be processed by the same processing engine. It will have a same data access layer, and it will have a single database layer. So that is how the monolithic applications were built. Monolithic means I just break that monolithic, right? Mono means single, lithic means stone. It's a single stone application, which means it cannot be broken down into multiple smaller chunks. So against which that microservices, how this is going to be useful? Okay, what are the different advantages that we have in microservices against monolithic? Right. I mean, while talking about that, I just remember one incident from olden days, like 20 years before. I was working as a software programmer in one of the banking applications, which was built up in mainframes. So I was asked to change a few field names in one of the CACS screens, right? So that was, I mean, that entire application had like more than 25 to 30 screens, and I was asked to change one of the screens and a few names, few field names. That's it, right? So I did the change and I compiled, I unit tested, everything looks fine, and we didn't have time or patience to do the entire integration testing. So we went ahead and rolled out that changes in the production. So obviously the next day, that is on the consecutive Monday morning, things, I mean, the entire application went down because of that change that I put in. So obviously there are some programs which need to be compiled, and which I did not compile, right? That went down because of the changes that I made, and because of that, some 15 to 18 bank branches could not use that application for the next couple of hours. So that was a production issue. We had to run and fix that issue, and we recompile under 10, 15 programs. Though I didn't make a single change, I had to recompile. I tested. It had so many other issues as well. So that is the disadvantage of using a monolithic. As compared to that, these microservice architecture can be broken down into smaller functionalities. As an analogy, you just take your mobile banking application, right? So it has multiple functionalities starting from login screen. Once you log in, you will land up on home page. Home page has the list of accounts that you maintain with the bank, and on the left hand side or right hand side, there are multiple functionalities that you can perform on those accounts, right? So all those things are available. So you can, if you want to view your current balance, you just go click it and select that account. You will be able to see that. The same way, if you want to do money transfer to the registered user, you can actually do that by selecting that particular menu. So there are multiple functionalities. If they build the entire application in microservices, the entire set of functionalities will be broken down, will be logically grouped into smaller chunk of smaller groups, right? So the entire each group will go under one microservice. So I'm just breaking down the entire one application into multiple smaller applications. So it's going to be easy for me to build and test the entire microservices than building one big software application, which will take more time for me to build and test because of parallel processing while doing microservices. So that is the biggest advantage of using microservices. Number two, we can deploy the component individually. I mean, going back to my own experience, right? So if I want to implement that particular screen alone with that monolithic, I couldn't have that. But if it was built in microservices, that particular screen alone can be implemented without touching any other components under the same umbrella of applications. So that is possible with microservices. So that is so while using microservices, the third advantage, which is my favorite one, is usage of multi-programming environment, right? While using microservices for a different set of functionalities, you can actually opt to have a different set of programming languages and databases, right? So you have banking application again, and then just going back to that, and there are few functionalities which are easy to build up in maybe in programming language A, and there are other set of programming, I mean, functionalities which can be built in other programming language B and other database. So this is the choice that is given to you, and based on the ease with which you want to build up your application, you can actually go for it. And as compared to monolithic, obviously this is not possible, right? Within that same software umbrella, the everything, the entire set of functionalities will be built under one programming language, and you are constrained to use only that. So this is the biggest advantage or basic that this microservices architecture has. So that's another point that I would like to touch base. The other comparison that I want to make with service-oriented architecture, that is SOA. SOA, I would probably think that logically it stands between monolithic and microservices. So in SOA also the functionalities are broken down into the different manageable components, but it won't be so tiny as the one that you break down in case of microservices. So you will have a little number of software pieces that you have to manage than that in the case of microservices. So it is up to you. You have to choose which architecture that you want to go for, right? I mean, I wouldn't really think that going for microservices would always be beneficial, right? I mean, even monolithic, we have been using monolithic for a few decades. I mean, more than 4 or 5 decades, and we were able to manage it. And the microservices just came in the last few years, and there are a lot of advantages because there are things keeps changing. But it is up to you to decide what kind of architecture that you want to go for. I mean, you don't have to really close your eyes and go for microservices because this is a new one. I mean, there are advantages still exist in monolithic and service-oriented architecture, that is SOA, and microservices, right? So there is another subtle difference in between service-oriented architecture and microservices, right? So which is actually microservices doesn't have that orchestration part, right? So in terms of SOA, you have multiple services in SOA also. All that services are orchestrated and given as an output, right, to the whatever the next layer that we have. That is a difference between service oriented, or that is SOA, to microservice. So microservices, everything is separate, loosely coupled components, right? But in case of SOA, everything is bundled together with that orchestrator, and the orchestrator will take that output to the next layer. So that's another difference that I want to point out. So that is what I just wanted to cover. Basic understanding of microservices, and I hope it is useful. So the next topic that I would like to cover with the microservices are Dockers and Kubernetes. Another interesting topics, which is actually a hot cake, is what I think. So I'll be covering on that in the next session. Thank you.